Welcome everybody to another episode of the 5Marks Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am your host as always, Mr. Martin115. The delight, the person apparently that Carmo doesn't agree that steals the show, but I don't really care what Carmo thinks. So, speaking of Carmo, joined this week with my lovely dance partner. And Carmo, how are you doing?
How are we doing, everybody? Welcome back for another week.
We didn't get that t-shirt made. Welcome back for another week.
It's going to come at some stage. We're going to get the Milky McMahon and then...
let it die. Let it die, the Milky gimmick. I hate it. I fucking hate it. But this week on the 5Marks, we are joined by... And you know what? I feel the best person to do this now because I have to have you do it after Hard Knocks. Carmo, who are we joined by this week?
I got slated for that Hard Knocks, so I better do it right.
Get it right.
Here we go. Right? Are you ready? Justy!
Yeah, don't say it how I say it.
I'm just never going to be able to say your name again. Never.
Just say that guy there. Like, just don't say his name. Like, but Justy, how are we doing?
Yeah, pretty good. How are you guys?
Tired, wrecked, tired. I'm all over the place this week. Absolutely all over the place this week. So,
I don't really want to know. I kind of said that for you just to be like, yeah, good, yeah, and then we can get on with the interview.
That's fair. That's fair.
This is how I feel every week, Justin. So it's okay.
He's supposed to get bullied here. This wasn't on the damn script, for fuck's sake. But Justy, thank you so much for coming on to the 5Marks. Carmo has been bullying for this one for so long. Like, I think you'll say it best, Carmo.
Yeah, I've been asking for this one, I think, since we nearly started our interview process.
LJ, Justy. Like,
yeah, and there's another one that we'll get.
We'll get down the road. We'll get down the road. I'm not going to spoil who it is, though.
Yeah, we might mention the Justy here after the show. You might put in a good word for us. But yeah, look, a massive fan ever since the first time I saw you, which was on an NLW show, I believe, earlier this year. No, late last year. Which
I really appreciate it.
Really, really big fan. Look, we'll kick it off as we always do. What is your earliest wrestling memory?
And that's a funny one for me because I've got a big ADHD brain and memory doesn't really suit me very well. But what I do recall is being very young and my uncles showing me tapes, the World of Sport tapes. Ooh. And ridiculous Big Daddy and this kind of stuff, and yeah, I just remember like my earliest memories of professional wrestling would have been World of Sport tapes that my uncle showed me, and then later obviously Sky One had WWE and WWF at the time, and I was a big fan of WCW Nitro on Friday nights on when Cartoon Network was over and TNT was just coming in. I was watching Nitro, but my earliest memories are like so fuzzy. But I loved big fan of Razor Ramon back in the day. Big Boss Man, like anything that was like big, colorful, and that was what that drew me into pro wrestling at the start.
You're very driven into the more kind of larger than life kind of characters with that. The Big Boss Man, the kind of the Razor Ramon, the bad guy.
Yeah, I was always I suppose drawn in. I was always kind of as a kid interested in more fantasy stuff than practical stuff. So I was always into my dragons and when my brother I'd say was into his motorsport and stuff like that, real practical stuff. But I was always into something that requires a bit of imagination. So when it came to pro wrestling, I always was drawn towards those big characters, colorful costumes, and guys who shout the loudest.
So who he's saying is he was a big Doink the Clown fan. Massive Doink the Clown fan.
I love Doink. Absolutely. Big, massive Doink fan.
What about Dink then as well?
Oh.
Dink and Doink.
He's trying to think.
No?
Dink and Doink.
I remember Dink and Doink. So wasn't there like a whole
The whole family of them.
yeah, there was
was,
a whole
yeah,
bunch of
there
them.
was.
But Dink was I remember Dink well because that was one of the funny things in school, going around and saying, "Did you see Dink come out?" And yeah, every it wasn't politically correct times back then. So when you saw a little person running around, it was
It was
it was the best
entertaining.
thing you could see all week.
Would you be the group in school that'd be wrestling outside in the schoolyard?
100%. We came up when I was in school in primary school first. I remember in say fourth class. So what are you in fourth class? Like 9?
About 9, 8,
So
9.
yeah, I remember them being. I remember we all had to pick a wrestler, who we were going to be, and then we'd go out into the schoolyard and kick lumps out of one another. And yeah, I just remember like at the time, I think at the time I was a big Owen Hart fan, so I was picking Owen Hart in the schoolyard and kicking lumps out of lads, or getting lumps kicked out of me, I should say.
The poor lads who got stuck inside that Boston Crab. Jesus Christ, they must have been screaming.
Yeah, there was some dodgies. Like we definitely shouldn't have been. We got in trouble a lot in school for applying submission holes that we did not know how to put in.
What actually made you get started in wrestling then? What kind of gave you that decision of this is actually something that I really want to do?
Well, it actually came on from there. I suppose I started backyard wrestling in Kildare here. We built our own rings, like from when I was about maybe 11 or 12 was probably when I built my first ring out of pallets and washing line. And then over the next few years, we probably were got a little bit more advanced. We got some blueprints online. The internet was brand new, so it was very hard to find. But we got some blueprints online of pro wrestling rings, and we all pooled our money together. It was probably about 20 plus guys here in Kildare that were massive wrestling fans, and we pooled all our money together and bought a load of steel, stole plywood and padding from a local building site, and got cable ropes. It was a fantastic wrestling ring. We built a 20-foot wrestling ring. And yeah, it was really good. And we put on shows for people in Kildare. I think like our biggest show drew more than 200 people. Just like,
what?
Yeah.
Wow.
In the backyard, in Danny Butler's backyard down on the Curra Road in Kildare town. A bunch of, I don't know, 14, 15-year-olds rolling around, beating each other up with sticks and trying our best at professional wrestling. And we drew about 200 people in.
Go on, tell us, what was your gimmick so in the backyard wrestling?
I had a few. I started off. Oh, this is embarrassing. I started off as the freight train. I thought that was a good. No such thing in Ireland, but I thought it was good. I heard it on American TV. Nothing stops the freight train. You know, I had a bunch of moves that I can't remember the name of now, but I freight train was my first one, and then I came up with a gimmick after that because that was a real serious gimmick where I wanted to be a badass, you know, because that was the cool thing at the time.
Yeah.
But then I realized that I was probably more suited to comedy, and I transitioned to Wild Bill Dudley, who was of Clan McDudley, and I got myself some tie-dye and some dungarees, and I was a Dudley boy from like an Irish Dudley boy, and I had a little Dudley faction. Yeah, it was, yeah.
Jesus, Daddy Dudley really got around. We got Dudleys in Ireland as well.
Yeah, he got around. That was the gimmick. He got around.
How many people got put through tables then around that stage?
Oh, it was like we just have to preface this with like, do not try this at home to anybody. But like, yeah, we raided building sites for like sheets of OSB board that was like when you went through it, like it shattered to pieces. Like, yeah. So we had like, oh man, there was also like a local dump near one of the places where we set up a ring. We had like there was three different backyards. We had venues, like we had three different backyards with three different like ring setups that we had, and one of them was near a dump, a council dump. And if you go into the dump, you could find like random stuff, and we found like an old canoe that we used as a weapon at one stage, but like road signs, like stop
Yeah.
signs. So we had like loads of stop signs and like crazy the stuff that we had. But yeah, how how I got away unscathed from my backyard wrestling days is beyond me, because we built like entranceways from scaffolding in Danny Butler in his yard. He had a big yard, and that's where we had our 20-foot ring. And we had pay-per-views. We called them pay-per-views, and no one was paying, but some people were viewing. But like we had a Royal Rumble match that we called the Body Count Rumble, and so Body Count was the name of the show. And then we had our main show was called Out of Control, and that's when we had all the road signs, because we found some road signs with the slippery road, signs,
Yeah,
where the
yeah.
car is. Yeah. So we called our show Out of Control, and like had yellow ring ropes and stuff. And yeah, so we built. His next door neighbor was a builder, so we went in and borrowed all the scaffolding, and we built a massive entranceway with scaffolding and sheets of plastic to look like fake Titantrons down the side, like massive setup. We even rented Rent-A-Fence and built a cage for one of the shows. What was the name of that? I can't remember the name of these videos are around somewhere as well. I know we have old VHS tapes of us backyard wrestling, but yeah, like we had cage matches and everything. I think we might have put I think it was a Hell in a Cell, because it was a cell, not a helmet. Like it was a cell because it was on the ring, but it was enclosed. We put a Rent-A-Fence over the top of it as well. And Gordon Kelly, one of the guys from in Kildare, he was, what was his name? Cyrus was his name, and he went off the top of the cage through a table.
He did not.
Yeah.
The fact that he's alive now is
Yeah, I'm sure he is. I haven't seen him
somewhere.
Survived that, yeah.
You're right, like that. It's set up like a proper federation, like by the sounds of it, like pay-per-views.
Yeah, we sent our tapes on to these contacts that we got on high spots, because some of the guys who were with us had traveled over to over to England to training schools, and came back and showed us wrist locks and basic back bumps and stuff like that. And yeah, we didn't use any of the wrist locks or anything like that, but we ended up sending our tapes off to these internet guys who rated wrestling, and they were like, these guys aren't backyard wrestlers, we call them garage wrestlers because their setup is so good and stuff. And like looking back on it, it was absolutely dreadful, but we were really proud of it at the time.
Good achievement to have, in fairness. Did you find that helped you then when you actually went into actual wrestling training? I believe you started with NWA Ireland.
It didn't help with my attitude. It probably helped with my pain threshold, because I always had a fairly high threshold for pain. But when we were backyard wrestling, we were like doing some crazy stuff, like silly stuff. But when we started training with NWA Ireland in 2002, 21 years ago, I remember just the guys that were there had just disdain for us, because we came in and we thought we knew what we were doing. We thought we were going to show these guys how to wrestle. And like a bus full of us came down the first time. Like there was, I think, 16 of us training from Kildare. We rented a bus to bring us from Kildare to Bray, because we didn't really know where Bray was. We knew it was in Wicklow, somewhere near Dublin, but we rented a bus, and like 16 of us went down. And I remember I showed up with my brand new white kick pads, and I had wrist tape on for training. And when we walked in, these guys from Kildare are gonna get killed. So yeah, they gave us the whole trial by fire on the first training sessions, and I think if I recall, definitely wasn't 16 guys coming back on the next week, but it was I wasn't prepared for how, I suppose, I walked in thinking like I'm going to be a wrestler today, and really I wasn't expecting that like this is going to take like forever. Like it's like sharpening a sword. Like you can't sharpen it enough. Like, so wrestling, you never, I suppose, like you're the man who thinks that he knows it all knows nothing, you know. So like you're always learning in wrestling. But when we walked in, I thought I was gonna walk in to that training facility. They were gonna see, oh man, these guys are good, and I was gonna be on the next show, which wasn't the case.
So who would have been the trainers at that time? Would have been Fergal and Paul, or?
Yeah, it was Fergal and Paul Tracy. So they had they'd been going over to NWA Hammerlock over in England, and they'd been training and coming back to Ireland and basically showing us what they've been learning over in Hammerlock. And in fairness to the guys, the training that they did in NWA Ireland at the time was phenomenal. Like, it was very technical. It kind of changed my opinion on what way I wanted to wrestle at the time. Where the guys were fantastic trainers. Paul was very gifted with the technical aspect of it and the drills, and Fergal was a great motivator. Knew all the moves. He had he had a great mind for like studying professional wrestling. So he had like tapes from like Japan, all over Europe, all wrestling that you wouldn't even consider looking up. Like, Fergal was studying that kind of stuff, and that was kind of instilled into us early when we were wrestling at the time.
How much of a help then was kind of Fergal through your early career? Like, as you said there, that he had that kind of motivation and stuff like that. And obviously Fergal ended up going to Japan and stuff like that. How great was he just to have around even during the early
I think like from the start, we all could kind of see that true determination that Fergal was gonna do it. Like, we said like Fergal was gonna make it. Like, the guy just he didn't think about anything else. He you know, ate, slept, walked, everything was professional wrestling. Like, you know, he breathed professional wrestling. So we all kind of knew. So it was funny. You had people that kind of attached themselves like to Fergal's style straight away, because he had an exciting style of pro wrestling, and you can kind of still see it in the likes of Paddy Morrow and Sean Max or Brennan, who or Sean Guinness, who you can kind of see when we were down training first, like, they would have been like, right, we're Fergal's boys. I'm gonna jump in there. And of course, dumb like me was like, yeah, I wanna do that too. So I'd casually go in and try all the stuff the guys were doing as well. So it was like, he actually had a massive influence on me in the start, because like, when you see someone like that has all that grit and determination and natural talent and charisma, you kind of want to drift towards that person to kind of, you know, emulate them or get as much from them as you possibly can.
So how long would you... Oh, sorry, Cameron, go on.
Sorry, I was just kind of quick. So just speaking on that kind of style then and everything like that, obviously you talked about like the backstage or the backyard wrestling. Sorry, I'm losing my words here. Moving into like actually coming into like an actual wrestling trend. Did you find that tricky, kind of like, I know how to wrestle, what am I doing? I should be already on a show here and stuff like that. Did you find that kind of hard transition?
It was a big shock on like the first training session, that when we realized that I couldn't just go in and show these guys that I know how to do a body slam or whatever, because I didn't really. Like, I was just winging it. I was really good at the bumps at the start. Like, so like that was my thing. Like, I always loved wrestlers like Christian and Chris Canyon and stuff like that. And I always thought they were really clean wrestlers. And even like as a kid, who hadn't started training wrestling, I was kind of studying it because I knew I wanted to be a wrestler. I was kind of watching these guys, and guys who were really crisp with their bumps and their movement in the ring. And so I was emulating the likes of Christian and Chris Canyon already. And with the knowledge of the bumps that I already had, I went in and I was pretty solid on like bumps and stuff like that. So those drills didn't phase me at all. Fitness wise, oh man, it was like when we were training in NW Ireland, I always liken it to a North Korean prison camp. People don't realize like there was so much. It was so intense, and like you had like lines of people, and we were doing squats, burpees, lion push-ups, everything just was drilled into us that we had to have calisthenics to get us through a wrestling match. So like you have to be able to do. Like if you fall down, you have to be able to do a push-up. Like if you're 20 minutes into a match and you're blowing up, you need to be able to do a push-up, get onto your feet, squat yourself back into position. So that was the thing. Calisthenics was just drilled into us from the start. So that was kind of a shock. How technical wrestling was not only like surprising to me, but also like straight away I kind of fell in love with that then. The technical aspect of wrestling, and kind of I've got a kind of a brain for like I zero in the ADHD in me, I suppose. I zero in on stuff that really appeals to me, and I'll hyper focus on it. Like, and it was stuff like the locks, how like key locks, the different kind of transitions into like from chain wrestling, stuff like that really kind of appealed to me at the start. And I kind of even put back to one side the kind of gimmicky and character stuff that I would have been used to doing backyard wrestling. And I put that to one side because I started really falling in love with the technical and the artistry of the movement of pro wrestling, I suppose you could say. And but that was a big change for me, like coming from the backyard where I was just throwing my friends around and being like pretty decent at bumping maybe, and having some, however much charisma I suppose a 16 or 17-year-old kid could have. It was kind of shocking how kind of technical wrestling was and how intense the training was.
So how long then, obviously, from from starting training to actually getting to do your debut match? Can you remember the time frame?
It's funny because it was so early, but it was the early days of Irish wrestling was in its infancy. So when we went down training first, there was a show on like within, I think, a week or 2 weeks. I remember they asked us to come down and watch this show, and I remember we came down, we sat front row and we cheered and went crazy for all the guys like Paddy Morrow were there on the show. Oh, Paddy Morrow actually reffed that show. But like Adam Burke was there, who would be Adam Abs. Fergal, Paul were obviously on it. They were doing their Team Ireland thing over in Hammerlock, so they'd done it over in the Hometown Heroes in Bray. Becky was on it. She wrestled a guy called Canine. So we came down and we saw that, and like the show was very rough. But for us, like I was like, this is crazy. This is so good. It was such a rough show because everybody wasn't very long wrestling. That I was like, okay, I'm gonna put my heart and soul into this, and I want to be on whatever shows are coming up. So from then to my day, like from first training session to my debut, I think it was about 3 months. And they threw us in for a tag team match. Myself and Danny Butler went against Paddy Morrow and Beautiful Benny B. guys from a local guy from Bray who would have been like a big hero to the to the local contingent down there, and we were told go out. I wasn't getting a shot in the show. I think Danny was a little bit heftier than me, had more of a wrestler's look, and he was getting booked. And they tried us out as a tag team on training 1 week, and it was coming up close to the show. And I remember I showed out as a heel, a shit-eating heel, and it was my antics on the apron that kind of tickled Fergal. Not so much Paul. I don't think Paul ever really liked any of my antics, but I think I tickled Fergal enough that I was given a shot in a tag match. So we had that tag match in Bray, and it was a 2-day thing. I think we had Bray and it might have been Arklow, and I had the match in Bray on the Saturday, and on the Sunday, Fergal came up to me and said, "Did you bring your gear today?" And I said, "Yeah." I hadn't, but he told me that I had a good showing on the Saturday and that I was booked on the Sunday. So I managed to beg, borrow, and steal some gear from some guys, and I had my second ever match. I wasn't supposed to have it on that Sunday. Yeah, so it was very rough, and me and Danny were known for like taking liberties with time. We'd go out, it was all very rough. But like we'd go out and because we were playing up to the audience so much and calling most of the match out there, that it was like we could have been having 40-minute matches as a tag team, like, which is very selfish on a show. But yeah, we were brand new, but yeah, it was 3 months in. Now, looking back, should I have been sent out there? I don't know, but it helped my confidence with wrestling. And since then, there was no looking back. I was on every show up until I broke my neck. I was on every show, and then I was only out due to injury.
There you go.
Were you kind of nervous or excited for those kind of first couple of matches? Because obviously you did have the backyard wrestling. Was it still that kind of nervousness going into them?
Absolutely shitting myself. I remember when just before my match, I kind of had a little bit of a panic attack. I remember I was in my gear. I was just ready. The match ahead of us was kind of wrapping up. I remember I kind of got a little bit overwhelmed. I felt it in my chest. My heart started pounding. Like just absolutely sweating. Like, for me, this was WrestleMania. This is my big shot. Like, I couldn't let everybody down. I couldn't let myself down. So I kind of had a bit of a panic attack. And I remember I kind of stumbled back against the wall, and I let myself squat down, and I was kind of sitting on my heels with my back against the wall. Entranceway was up here. I had my hands over my mouth, and I was trying to like slow my breathing, and I was getting right. And Johnny Moss was sitting down on a chair across, and he said, he just looked at me and said, "Are you all right?" And I said, I'm very nervous. And then he laughed and said, "Enjoy it." And I did. It was probably the best bit of advice I ever got. It was just 2 words. It was enjoy it. And when I went out through the curtain, everything changed. I was in full character, had the time of my life, and I did enjoy it. And I came back and I was just beaming from head to toe. And that's when I got told, right after that match, you're on tomorrow's card as well. So like, doing cartwheels on top of the world.
One person I do want to talk to you about is Danny Butler. You obviously brought him up here quite a bit early on, but he was someone that you teamed with for quite a long time in your early part of your career. How like important was he to your career, and even just how was it teaming with him?
Oh, Danny Butler he's a character and a half. I do miss him around wrestling because he's such a big character. But like me and Danny grew up together, same age. We went to primary school together. I remember me and Danny used to sit on the school bus going to to swimming classes, and we used to talk about wrestling, and we invented some guy, an invisible guy, that when we used to drive down the road, we used to watch the guy, and we'd come up with new different ways for him to get hurt. Like, oh, he fell in that fence and tore his leg off. I remember those probably my earliest memories of Danny. So when like Danny facilitated a lot of our wrestling as well. Like we would have built our best, not our first, but our best wrestling ring that we ever built. The one that I told you about earlier on would have been built down in Danny's yard. That's like we're all like my fondest childhood memories are down the back garden of Danny Butler. And then obviously coming into wrestling with someone who you'd consider one of your best friends in the world is it's great. Like you have someone that's going to watch your back, but also someone that you're competing with. If he gets a shot on the show, then you have to work harder to get that shot. Like you're going to be in competition with someone like that. But ultimately, we ended up being thrown together as a team, and we ran with it. We embraced it, and we had like some of the most fun you'll ever had. We're like 3-time Irish tag team champions. I don't know how long those reigns would last, but I'm sure if you were to count them up, they'd probably be maybe a few years at least. We traveled up and down the country together, like getting up to absolute mischief. Some fucking debauchery is going on as well. Danny loved to drink, and still does, but he was just a party animal. And just to be in the wake of a Danny and Justy party, I suppose, was probably a thing to behold for people. Yeah, two big characters teaming with each other. Like those first few years in NW Ireland, teaming with Danny, what a great experience for me to have. Like just hanging out with one of your best friends, getting up to all kinds of mischief in and outside of the ring. But like just being able to do that with someone who you consider like a lifelong comrade it's fantastic. Like being part of Team Mega is still one of the fondest things in my life.
Can I ask you?
Sorry,
Can I just ask you? Is there one stupid road story that comes to your mind between the two of you?
Stupid road story. There's a million stories, right? But does anything come to mind? Probably not a lot that I could probably mention on here. I don't know. Tennessee was fun. We headed over to the NWA anniversary back in 2005, I want to say, and that was that was Danny Butler at his best, I think. Every day he would drink a bottle of Jack Daniels, and like also we have to remember we were 19 at that stage, and we definitely were not legal to be drinking in the United States of America, but we all had fake IDs made up. Our good friend Bean, who was also a facilitator of professional wrestling here in Kildare, and he made fake IDs for us to go over, and yeah, that was crazy. I don't know if there's many stories I could tell you, but I know that Danny Butler at his hardcore best was probably Tennessee 2005. And if you want to hear those stories, ask those people. Get Danny Butler on here. You'll probably have a better recollection of those. Yeah.
I'll throw back to you, Carmo.
One question I just did want to ask about Danny Butler is, I think you won your first NWA tag team title match or titles in NLW around kind of 07-ish, I believe.
Okay.
How cool was it? How cool was it just to win the titles with Danny? Obviously, being a childhood friend as well.
Oh, it was great. I remember when I remember when the day came along that there was a few names in the hats for for who was going to compete for those belts. And again, like this, me and Danny were a couple of messers, loudmouths. But you know, I think we were good. You know, we were definitely guys that you wanted to have on your show if you wanted big characters. But we never really expected that we'd get the run. We were the first ever Irish tag team champions. So like we never thought that the opportunity would come that we'd get to hold those belts. So it was a massive honor, and I remember being extremely emotional when we won the belts. And it was, yeah, like for me at that time, I didn't think it was going to get any better. Like, you know, hanging out with your best mate, like creating havoc in the wrestling ring, and then getting that run with those belts. It was a massive honor and like one of the biggest privileges of my life.
Next, I kind of want to talk about is AWR. So AWR had kind of like a lot of cool different wrestlers that obviously competed in it. And it kind of goes back to what Martin said there a while ago about Danny Butler and about stories and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted you just even talk about like wrestling with some of these guys and obviously some stories. I have a few names down here. You can stop me at any stage as I'm reading them out. But I have like people like Sabu, Scotty Tuhati, Eugene, Marty Jannetty, Gangrel, Rene Dupree, X-Pac, Sandman, Chris Masters, I believe, was in there as well. And that's just to name a few. How was that?
Yeah, I wasn't going to stop you because I love the name dropping. It's fantastic. Yeah, it was brilliant. Like AWR was like, again, another one of the times in my life. Like it was funny, like just how things happen for me. It's always ends up being like dumb luck or just crazy circumstances that I end up in the position that I'm in. And I wasn't supposed to be wrestling on any of them shows. I signed up to do ring work because I was pretty good at setting up a wrestling ring. So Joe Cabray and Jamie Coleman, who were running them shows, said, right, we'll get Justy on board to do ring crew, because you know he knows what he's talking about. I was put forward by again Paul Bean, and I'm actually like I'm a qualified carpenter as well, like so like I'm good hands to have around the place, like so I'm not afraid of a bit of work, and I also like know how to build things, so yeah, I got on board to do ring crew for AWR. And it just so happens that we had Sabu on the show, but Sabu had like proper injured his back. Like he had like a broken back more or less. So he had like some vertebrae all out of place, and he was insisting that he was still going to wrestle, but he didn't have any of his painkillers. Like he couldn't bring the medication obviously into the country through the airport. Like so he had to get a prescription filled here in Ireland, but the day he landed was the day he was wrestling. So the guys are like, we need something to do with Sabu, so we're going to give him a squash match. So we'll give him Justy. And yeah, so I kind of got set up. I remember Joe saying that he wanted, because I wasn't in shape at all, he was like, oh, I want you to do a fitness instructor gimmick. And it'll be funny because you'll be a fat fitness instructor. And I said, good, yeah, I can do that, easy. And so I went off and bought myself some ridiculous like training gear. The village in Kildare is down here. We have the Nike outlet store. And I went down and just bought the brightest, dumbest training gear, headbands, whistles, everything, like leg warmers, illuminous leg warmers, and was going out to do a fitness instructor gimmick. And yeah, so I didn't have a name or anything like even yet, and it was just before the show. Jamie Coleman came up to me and was like, "Justy, do you have a name?" I was still Justy because I was doing the Justin Red gimmick at the time, which I thought was a funny name. So racking my brains, and at the last second, like maybe 5-10 minutes before the match was supposed to happen, I said to Jamie, I said, what about Just in Shape? And he said, brilliant, love it, go on. And I went out. We didn't have any music or anything. I remember we had a CD with the Baywatch theme tune. So all the lights went down and I came out to the Baywatch theme tune, and got had a squash match with Sabu, who just beat me around the ring, put me through a table. You couldn't tell me that he had a broken back because the guy was trying moonsaults and all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, I came out and I'd done a promo before the match, a cold promo. I didn't even know what I was going to do, so I'd done the typical fitness gimmick thing where I told everyone that they were fat slobs, and everyone's drinking their fizzy pop and chewing on their crisps, and they should be more like Just in Shape. And yeah, Sabu's music came out and he threw a chair at me a couple of times, put me through a table, and fun little match. But after the show, what I didn't know was the guys who were the promotional team from the French leg of the tour were after coming to the show, and they apparently thought my stuff was very funny, and they were like, we can't wait to see this fat Irish guy on this fat Irish man, we cannot wait to see him. And Joe Cabret was like, no, no, he's not on the show. But it turns out, the guys gave in and put me on the shows from then. So I ended up getting to wrestle some of my childhood heroes, and I'm forever grateful for that because it was absolute ball doing it.
I have to ask as well, as Martin did say about the Danny Butler story there a while ago, have you any kind of outrageous stories from those AWR times?
Yeah, I do. Am I going to say any of them here? No. Again, there was we were young, we were in a foreign country, and we were partying. It's funny because when I was there, because I was a ring crew, I was on what we call the sleeper bus, which was a bus with beds on it, and I was there with the production crew and a couple of the other ring crew guys, being normally Phil came on one of the tours with us, a couple of the tours with us, but yeah, we done ring crew, and so we had to be on the sleeper bus, and the other guys like Paddy and Maxer and guys like that were so happy because they were like on the wrestling bus. So basically they got to go back to a hotel every night and then get up in the morning. They got on a bus and they were with all these famous wrestlers on the bus. But what nobody else realized was the sleeper bus was a fucking absolute dream to be on, because what we do is we'd finish the show, and where the rest of the guys would get on a bus and go to a hotel and sleep at the hotel, what we would do was we'd get on the bus, and the production crew would have gone and raided the arena. There was all of these Zenith arenas in France. They would raid them and get whatever food that they could get. So we had all all the proper sandwiches from the day that were left over from catering and stuff like that. And we had drink, just copious amounts of alcohol. And the French guys were partaking in a bit of smoke at the time. I wouldn't have been partaking much. And but we'd get on the sleeper bus, eat some food, and then drink like fucking fish until about maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. Head to bed to our little fucking our little video. Like, you had to get into bed like you were a fucking old VHS videotape. Like someone had to insert you. But we got into our beds, got up the next day at 8 o'clock, went into the arena, had some breakfast there, set up the ring, played games, done whatever we wanted. We had they went off and bought me for my gimmick some scooters. So we were we'd spend the day doing we'd set up the ring early, and like doing jousts with kendo sticks on these scooters. Like it was fucking we just play around. And all the time the wrestlers would have been, they'd get up at like early from the hotel. They'd all be ushered down onto a bus where they were all cramped into these little seats, and then they'd have to travel like 6 to 10 hours and then get to like to the venue and then get ready for the show. When we spent our whole night drinking, we slept and then woke up at the venue, set up the ring, and then played for the rest of the day. So we definitely had the best. Jamie Coleman ended up coming on the sleeper bus once, because there was something going on that he had to be at the venue early the next day, and he couldn't believe it. We were having the times of our lives. He was like, "Oh, all the other guys think that they're winning because they're on this bus with the wrestlers who nobody is talking to. They're like all miserable traveling 6 hours back into a bus, but we're partying all night long." So Jamie then ended up switching and being on the sleeper bus for the rest of the tour, and he was one of the guys running the tour. So I'll tell you, he could have been in proper hotel rooms all of the while, but he decided that the sleeper bus was for him. So yeah, sleeper bus. There's some good stories from the sleeper bus, but yeah, probably you have to leave it there.
Go on, Carmo.
Well, just the last thing I will ask you about AWR. As I mentioned all those names there a couple of minutes ago, did you have someone that you kind of like really, really like to work with more so than kind of the other people, or did anybody kind of surprise you?
100%. Scotty Too Hottie is an absolute gentleman. He's so giving with his time, and he taught me so much. At the time, I was still very green, and I didn't know how to wrestle for TV or for camera. I wasn't very restrained in my wrestling. I didn't know how to not go out there and put it all out there for that match. You know, like putting the match together with Scotty was one of the best learning experiences I've ever had in pro wrestling. And he was just the nicest guy as well. Like a few years after the AWR, I ended up going on a holiday to Florida. He was like, "Oh, if you're going to Florida, just let me know, and we'll meet up." And he met up. He brought me to Disney's Animal Kingdom, and we went to the all-you-can-eat Zambezi buffet, and he looked after me. He paid for everything. He was fucking incredible. And going to into swim with dolphins in Discovery Cove, he knew somebody in there at the time and got me, like, I suppose, for want of a better term, a backstage pass, where we went in and met all the dolphins and seen how they were reared and all like the kind of stuff. So like he went above and beyond and out of his way for little old me, just because we had some matches in France a few years beforehand.
Did you ever have to pinch yourself during those moments and be like, I'm here like with Scotty Too Hottie, what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Like there was so many times in those tours that we had to kind of reflect and think about, like, did I ever imagine that I was going to be like on tour wrestling against the likes of like the Sandman? Like I watched ECW growing up, like, and then I fucking wrestled half their fucking roster by the time I was at AWR. It was crazy. But I remember one distinct time. We were in Romania at the time, and one of the shows was being run by the Romanian mafia, which was an experience. But they put us up in this 5-star hotel that had like a built-in casino and strip club and like a spa, and like it was crazy. Like it was unbelievable. And myself, Phil the Trill Boyd, and Paul Bean, who I will mention a lot on this podcast, or this interview. Us three were we were chilling out in a jacuzzi, sipping on hot chocolates, and X-Pac, who would have been a massive, like, I was a massive D-Generation X mark when I was a kid, like, when I was a kid, a few years before it. And I loved X-Pac, you know, absolutely loved them. Like, I like adored them. And I didn't get starstruck a lot with a lot of the wrestlers, but X-Pac was one of the guys that I was kind of nervous at chatting with and stuff. So we were in the hot tub, and X-Pac was doing lengths of the pool, just, you know, chilling out, doing lengths of the pool behind us. And Bean turned around to me and just turned around to the two of us and just said, lads, did you ever think when you were a kid and you were dreaming about professional wrestling that you'd be in a jacuzzi in Romania sipping on hot chocolate and watching X-Pac do lengths of the pool? And I said, no, that wasn't on the bingo card. But it was one of those. That was a poignant time for me where I had to think, like, if ever there was a time to pinch yourself, it was then. Like,
was there anyone? Was there anyone that you actually met that you can, like, you asked them, like, oh, can you tell us like a funny story or something that you can remember to this day?
Was there someone who told me?
Yeah, story? So like, say, like, you went up to X-Pac, like, having a chat, and he tells you, oh, here, let us tell you this story.
Not so much kind of in the terms of like going up and you, like, I feel really awkward about going up and chatting to guys, like, when they're going about their business. But we had the privilege a couple of times of having someone on the sleeper bus with us, so they got to come in and share the sleeper bus experience. So yeah, they were told that, like, they were one of them, I suppose, was I can get straight into it, Sid Vicious, who was, you know, like 7 foot tall. So being cramped up on the bus all day, he decided, the guys told him that the sleeper bus will probably be a better option. When you're sitting up in the sleeper bus, there's plenty of leg space, like, it's like surround couches with tables everywhere, and that kind of appealed to him. And I was furious because I done so much pushback on the fact that I was like, oh, Sid Vicious is going to come. We can't party on the bus now. We're all going to have to go to bed early because he's going to want to go to sleep. And he didn't seem like the kind of, like, that he was overly chatty or anything like that. And then when he got on the bus, complete 180. Like, he was an absolute gent. He was, he sat up and he drank beers and he told us stories, road stories, just chatting about himself for so long. I remember a funny bit of this was Jamie Coleman was on the sleeper bus at the time, and it was, I think, myself, Phil Boyd, Bean, and Jamie Coleman. It would have been the same trip. I think the Romanian one was either that one or the one before. But we were sitting up on the sleeper bus, and Sid was just he was just rattling out the stories, like, and we were just loving it and just asking as many questions, just like little kids, like, wide open. And Jamie Coleman would be like, he's a wrestling encyclopedia. He knows so much, like he knows everything. But he was just asking so many questions because he was so interested. And at one stage, Sid was like, and then when I got fired from WCW, and Jamie said, "Oh, why did you get fired from WCW?" And he knew the answer before he said the question, but it just came out and he couldn't get it back in. And Sid said, all the colour drained from his face. He turned around to Jamie, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "Well, maybe because I stabbed the guy about 30 times." And it got so awkward, but also we popped and laughed like fuck then after about like 5 seconds of just awkward silence. Yeah, the mood went back up. That was good. We also had Brett on the sleeper bus as well. He was a little bit more like, he wouldn't have set up and partied all night, but he had a couple of beers with us, and he chatted away, and he spoke as much as he could until he got tired, and then he headed up and went to bed, and we all had to stay really quiet on the sleeper bus and go to bed. But while he was up and hanging out with us, it was a real treat to have, like, Bret the Hitman Hart telling you road stories, like, as you're heading down the road, creating a road story. It's pretty cool.
Go on, Carmo.
That's pretty savage, embarrassing. You kind of spoke there about the AWR and about the introduction of the character Justin Shane. Was that kind of the lead up to the gymnastics then in OTT?
Yeah, so I suppose it would be, yeah. So I just started doing the Justin Shape gimmick because I thought it was hilarious. I was coming up with all kinds of that having a real gimmick, because the Justin Bread thing at the start, I wanted to be like a proper country, like a redneck, like an Irish redneck, but it didn't really work out because in the tag team we kind of just kept on kind of like, it still worked out because I wrestled mostly in Dublin and I got to do the culture thing, and there was a lot of banter between like us being cultures in Dublin. So just the bread thing was working, but it was also got pretty stale. Like, so when I had Justin Shape come along, then my creative juices just skyrocketed. Like, I went off and got myself all kinds of ridiculous Mr. Motivator themed gear. Just came up with so many slogans, like the squat thing, the lunchtime special, Mr. Pectacular, bisexual, trisexual, whatever. I had a whole spiel for Justin Shape, and it was really good. And that's when I sunk my teeth into doing like in-ring promos a little bit more, and doing like I hadn't really done much in the way of kind of in-ring promos, except for when I broke my neck. I was managing Becky for a while, and because I couldn't do in-ring stuff, I was kind of cutting my teeth on promos. And the same, I suppose, with in AWR, I was doing a bit of managing as well. But the Justin Shape thing came along. I was just more or less promo. Every show that I was on, I was begging for a little bit of mic time, and it didn't always come because people didn't trust me with a mic. But when it did come, I relished the idea of getting into more of the theatrical side of pro wrestling as well. So yeah, the Justin Shape thing kind of went dominoed up until OTT started off, and then I suppose we had Barry and Sam, Be Cool and Sammy D, would have been in the Fight Factory. They would have been like, I suppose, the next kind of group of guys that came along after, like myself and Phil and Danny and that crew. And they really there wasn't much opportunities. Like, Irish wrestling was kind of dying before OTT. Not that it was dying, but it was like just plateaued. Like, we weren't getting good crowds. We needed kind of a boost. And when OTT came along, there was an opportunity there for people to kind of step up, and we really kind of put forward that Barry and Sam should be an OTT. Like, and so we're two good guys, loads of enthusiasm, loads of character. And they just needed more reps in wrestling. And that's how, like, I was, the first iteration of the gymnastics didn't actually have Sammy D in it. It was actually myself as a manager, Be Cool, and Katie Harvey. And Katie Harvey wasn't available for the second show. So, and Sammy D had done like a stoner gimmick for the first show, and it didn't really get traction. Like, so Sammy became a gymnasty on show 2 for OTT. And yeah, I think it was a great dynamic, because where the guys didn't have much experience when it came to promos and stuff like that, they were both great up-and-coming wrestlers and great characters and loads of charisma and loads of talent and just oodles of potential. So for me to get to work with those guys and to actually have a small part, like, you can see the two guys now in OTT, and how, like, you know, Sammy D is the world champion, and Be Cool is probably the most popular act, like Irish act in the country right now. And like, for me to kind of say that I had a small part in helping those guys out on the way. Like it makes me really proud. And again, I loved my time at the gymnastics. The gymnastics, again, like just creatively and kind of in that Tivoli OTT atmosphere. I think some of the best times I had in ring in professional wrestling was OTT.
I want to kind of talk a little bit later on just about the like working with B Code and Sam and even Becky Lynch and people like that. There's only kind of two moments in particular about the gymnastics that I really want to talk. One is the first OTT show, and obviously with that kind of different crowd experience and everything like that. And the other was obviously the tag team title win for the gymnastics. Can you tell us about both of those?
Yeah, so the first show was incredible. Like we've done some over 18 stuff before, and we had other stuff that Joe had promoted just before AWR, like these college shows, which were he more or less sold a wrestling show to colleges around the country, and we'd go and do some like funny stuff. Like they had like guys dressed up as George Bush versus Osama bin Laden and stuff like that, as was the style at the time. And like they had these like kind of comedy, like we'd all dress up in different gimmicks, like, and then like have ridiculous matches. Like we were I think me and Georgie Mack were actually Lou and Andy from Little Britain, and I was in the wheelchair. And then the referee would turn his back, and I don't like it, and I'd get up and I'd do a flip off the top rope, and then I get back into my wheelchair. And, so we were doing over 18 stuff. So we kind of knew there was, we knew the feel for like an over 18s audience. Like those shows didn't go great, the college shows, because just basically it was a freshers week in all the colleges, and like guys were going crazy. Like, so anyone would show up, even if they weren't wrestling fans, they show up to mock us. So what we done in those shows was put me and Danny Butler out main event in hardcore matches, and we beat the shit out of each other. Like we because we had a lot of skeptics in the audience, we just like give each other black eyes every night. They just punch each other up. I think I got my nose broke on one of them shows. That was the first time Danny broke my nose. Not the last time Danny broke my nose, but it was yeah, I remember those just being really intense shows. And so we kind of knew. And also Fight Factory had done some poetry slam. We done the poetry slam shows, which was the mixture of slam poetry and professional wrestling. And again, me and Danny main evented both those poetry slam shows early in hardcore matches. And so we knew, like, we got, I think that poetry slam show, because it was promoted so well by the actual people who are, I don't, Creative Ireland was the name of this group, and they got all kind of artists in together, and a lot of hippies showed up that night, and I'm sure they didn't know what professional wrestling was, but there was probably about 750 people on one of them shows, and, in like an abandoned building in Dublin. And yeah, so like we knew there was an over 18s, people wanted over 18 shows, but we were watching Irish wrestling kind of flail around, and Joe Cabrera had a vision that like it could work. And in fairness, Jesus, like, for the guy put in some serious work to make OTT what it is today. But looking at that first show, I think we could all agree when we got back there, like everyone was buzzing from it. The show was a huge success. It was in the Tivoli, which is like a mecca. It was just like from the get-go, we knew it was like just such a special venue. And we went out, we done our thing. We leaned heavily into like comedy and spectacle. I don't know if OTT really goes down that road now, because I think the audience has kind of changed a little bit, or at least the wrestling has changed enough. So, but like at the start, we were able to get in a lot of casual fans who just wanted to have an entertaining night, and like adding comedy and professional wrestling and kind of the spectacle of like hardcore wrestling and stuff like that. I think was a great mix to get people through the door at the start. And I think like that first show was incredible, because I think everybody came back afterwards and was like, this is going to work. This will work. Like if we keep going at this, even if it stayed like that, we would have been happy. But it just built and built and built, and then obviously, it built so much that we could have moments like that tag team title win, that was, and like again, one of my proudest moments in pro wrestling was the two guys winning those belts, because I felt like a big part of it. Number one, because it was a win for those guys, it was a win for the gymnasties, but also it was like I believed in what we could do as the gymnasties, and I believed that us three as these like kind of funny comedy guys who maybe you wouldn't think about putting belts on. I think we could have we knew that we could engineer the audience's love for us, that we could build that, and we could get people behind us, because everybody loves an underdog. Everybody loves the class clowns, and you had three class clown underdogs in the gymnasies, and I think our build up to that match with the Kings of the North, so polarizing, but it was like the gymnasies had to do they had to win 3 matches to get their shot at the championships, and it was like they stacked the deck against us so much that if we didn't get those championship belts at the end of it, I think there would have been a riot in the Tivoli. So like there was a big build up to that, and then finally when the guys got that pin and the pop, like that was up to that date, I think that would have definitely been the loudest pop that you would have heard in the Tivoli. And I probably biased because I was in the ring at the time, but I think definitely up until that time, there's been other times since that, like there's been incredible pops, like Pete Dunne making surprise entrance, Fergal showing up, but there's been incredible pops since. But I think up until that time, I think that was probably the loudest pop, and that makes me really proud to know that we were able to build up something just through story and getting an audience emotionally invested into what we were doing.
I think one of the big things coming out of that as well is like if the Kings of the North are the tag team champions, they need to stay the hell away from Barry. Seems like anytime Barry brings somebody with him, Kings of the North are tag champions, they're dropping them to Barry.
Yeah, it seems that way, yeah.
Just how good he is, I suppose, as well. One of the other matches that I kind of want to talk about it's a bit later on in OTT, is when you teamed with actually MJF to go against Angel Cruz and Barry himself. How was it teaming with MJF? And even back then, did you ever think he'd be turning into the kind of star that he is now?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like the way he presented himself. First of all, he was an absolute blast to work with. He was a gent. He was up for anything. I knew within like the first few minutes of meeting him that we were going to have fun in this match, because he was just open to every suggestion. Like we told him it was going to be silly, and he brought the silly, and he was just a genuine dude. And yeah, so like it's weird when you're in the presence of someone who's younger than you, but he's going to be way more successful. Is has his head screwed onto pro wrestling, and you knew he was just he was a star straight away. He was a star. But working with MJF was an absolute pleasure. Like I would have loved to get a chance to do more.
I just want to move on then to the Phoenix Championship. So obviously you became Phoenix champion. I believe you beat LJ Cleary, Reardon O'Connor, and Steve Savage in a match. Can you tell us about the moment that you even found, like, just winning that title alone?
Yeah, that was actually a fairly emotional time for me, because I was at the time, it was like we were just coming out of the pandemic. Wrestling was just getting back to kind of trusting that shows would actually work, and that we could actually go out there and do some wrestling in front of a live audience. And I kind of resigned myself that maybe wrestling was at an end for me over the pandemic, because I from lying up, from not doing anything, from being stuck in the house for 2 fucking years, I suppose I was starting to feel my body was starting to like tell me like it's probably best that you give this up. You know, my neck, like I broke my neck in 2003, and that's like, you know, fuck this. That'll be 20 years ago in October. So yeah, like all my joints are kind of starting to feel a little bit. I wasn't the fittest, and I kind of wasn't the most confident in my wrestling at the time as well. Like I was kind of thinking, like these new guys, the up and comers, are kind of, they're coming along, they're able to do stuff that I can't do. You know, I was kind of thinking, is there even a place for me left in Irish professional wrestling, bar maybe like take up a referee's position, or you know, maybe be a manager for someone, like one of these younger guys or something like that, become a commentator or something. So when the opportunity came for the championship belt, like I was a bit apprehensive about what way it would be received, especially like on the night. It was in Limerick that we had that 4-way match, and I remember LJ being the MVP of Irish wrestling. People, like he was a big heel in down there at the time, and there was a massive roar for LJ. Like they wanted his head on a fucking spike by the end of that match. And when Reardon came down, massive pop for Reardon, because he was a Phoenix boy. You know, the guys want to see him do well. And then obviously you've got Steve Savage coming out in Limerick, fucking, which is crazy. Like, you know, he's a god down there to those people. Like they go crazy for Steve. And then I came out and I was kind of like, oh, and Justy's here. And I felt like, right, you've got something to prove here then, like to come out. Like, again, I'm not saying I wasn't popular or that people were disinterested in me. It's just that when you were up against 3 guys who everybody had emotionally invested in, and then Justy was there, and what's Justy? He's just there to shout Justy, and we'll see what way we won, what way the match can go. And then as the match went on, I could feel more and more people were getting behind me, and they were, you know, they were coming up for me, like. And by the time I had hit the 3 count and I got the pin, the place went fairly wild. Like, you know, obviously it wouldn't have been a Steve Savage pop, but I was so fucking elated in that moment that I was like, okay, I done it, I did it, I had a match, and I was very proud of that match. I won the belt. I was fucking so chuffed at my only ever singles title in pro wrestling, and it took nearly 20 years to get there, and I was so happy with myself, but also I felt the weight of a company then on my shoulders, which is a big responsibility to have, and also the kind of worry that, okay, now you're a main event wrestler now, and you're going to be in the flagship match for a company that you really want to improve and not take away from. So I could feel the burden and the panic and the anxiety of holding, like flying the flag for Phoenix Wrestling. But I think I done okay, as okay as I could do. Probably I stepped up, and those main events that I did have, I'm quite proud of a lot of those matches, and the fact that I was trusted to be the main guy for that company. Still, like, I'm pretty happy. I'd be a lot happier if I was the guy for a company that didn't fucking go under and disband. But no, for those for my time as Phoenix champion, I still have that belt over yonder in a room, and yeah, I'm very proud and very happy with the way things were, and I'm grateful, and it was one of the great honors of my career to be champion of Phoenix.
as you kind of said there as well, like during COVID and stuff, you're not really sure, coming out of it, whether you can kind of keep doing it to the level that you were doing it and stuff like that. Was that title win kind of a moment where you're like, I can still do this?
Yeah, I think there was no, I still to this day doubt myself a lot. I kind of have imposter syndrome a lot of the time. To kind of, you know, like, should I be taking a space from these young, hungry guys who are like just filled with talent and potential, and then an old guy like me who comes out shouting his name, like a fucking deranged Pokemon. Is there still, is there still, is there still space for me in professional wrestling? And I still have to deal with that, and I have to juggle with it. But at the time with Phoenix, it was one of those moments that I was justified in having my spot there. I was like, okay, maybe I don't deserve this spot, but I've had matches that I can be proud of and say, like, those were main event caliber matches, and I went out and I gave it my all, and we entertained.
100%. Another person I do want to talk about, and he was in that match as well, is obviously Steve Savage. You had that match with Steve Savage, I believe it was in Phoenix as well, in Dolan's, where it ended up being a no contest because I believe Steve got injured. You talked about it a little bit at Hard Knock. Can you tell us about that match?
Yeah, it wasn't a no contest. I won the match.
This is my fault.
No, it's fine, because it there is still the asterisk over it, because Steve was injured, and if ever there was a time that Steve was gonna beat me and get that championship belt without any kind of like little marks beside his name in the ledger, it was going to be that day. But unfortunately, he came into the match injured, and we still had an absolute doozy of a match. A barn burner. We tore the wrestling ring down during that match, and we slammed each other on steel and on timber, and I ended up I beat Steve by tying his legs together with the ring ropes and fish hooking him with the turnbuckle, and he didn't tap out, he passed out. So that was the kind of it was an intense match, and it was kind of indicative of the kind of matches that myself and Steve were having at the time, that were really hard hitting, intense, heavy on the back end, where we were just trying to just finish the match. Big impacts to try and get that pin, because you never know when the next count is going to be 3. So yeah, we had a great match, but I can't, because every match I've had with Steve, there's going to be something where it said that, okay, when I won the Phoenix Championship belt, I didn't pin Steve for the belt. When I beat Steve in Dolan's, he wasn't 100%. And every other time that we've come together and I've come out victorious, there's been something where it's been said, but Steve would have beat you if. So I think that's in Hard Knocks now. I think that's what I'm looking forward to, is finding out when Steve's 100% and on the top of his game. Is he going to beat me, or can I weather the storm that is Steve Savage? And that'll be a great story in itself, I think, whenever we get to it.
Now, I know I'm kind of jumping the gun here with Carmo as well, but obviously at Hard Luck we saw, Steve Savage in the unsanctioned match, and to everyone's shock, you came out and you gave him a helping hand in the main event. You feel like from those matches there was that level of respect built with you and Steve, that you were like, I'm going to go out now and sort this issue, but we have unfinished business that we need to sort?
Yeah, well, that's what I said. But yeah, but genuinely, without any kind of pomp or gimmick or anything like that, like, I have a deep respect for Steve. I think what he's doing in Limerick is fantastic. I think he's altruistic to a point where he's taken away from himself. There, he was going to step aside in Limerick so that the younger guys could have their shot. When really, like, that's like you're sawing off one of the legs of Limerick wrestling there if you don't have Savage. Like he's the guy who's, that Limerick wrestling is kind of being built on. Like he's the foundation of that place. And I think for me, that's why I said it in the promo after the match. Like, give up this ridiculous business of like Steve Savage can't wrestle in Limerick. Like, just have him back. Like he's the foundation. He's a cornerstone. He's the pillar. He's the guy in Limerick wrestling. And I again, and I say, like, no gimmick, no theatrics at all. I really have a deep respect for Steve, for his enthusiasm for pro wrestling, his emotions that he puts into pro wrestling, and just the love he has for it, how much he gives to those guys in Limerick, and just his work ethic, like what he puts into pro wrestling. Like you can see from his look to the intensity of his matches, you can actually just see the emotion he has when he just talks about professional wrestling, and that's the kind of guy that I want to be in there with. And if I don't have much left, if I'm not going to have a long run, I definitely want to get in and do some kind of a program with Steve where he can tell a story.
I just want to ask you this kind of quickly. We kind of touched on it with Foxy when we had him on a couple of days ago. What was your reaction to that unsanctioned match? Like, is that something that you kind of like? For me personally, it's something that I've seen quite a lot on, like you see it on YouTube and obviously different things like that. But seeing it in person, it was just a very, very scary match. But what was your reaction to the match?
Yeah, well, obviously it was a very intense match. Guys went out there and done all kinds of stuff. But I've been in those matches before. I've been in the thumbtacks and the light tubes and kendo sticks and barbed wire and fucking everything. Like I've been set on fire, like, So I think me looking at it is probably slightly different from someone in the audience looking at it, where they're kind of like, holy shit, I can't believe these guys are doing that, are putting their bodies through that. It's fucking insane. But I'm looking at it from the wrestler's point of view and I don't know, maybe the guys are different, but like when that first light tube hits and the adrenaline goes and you're like, holy shit, yeah, like loving every fucking minute, man. When you hear the audience fucking like a spurt of blood comes out of your neck and the audience goes, it's like just euphoria, my brain floods with dopamine. So like I think maybe I'm a masochist, but for me, when I watched that, I was so happy for the guys. When I was back, I didn't get to see all of it because I was peering through a curtain at the time and trying to keep myself somewhat secret. But when I got to, it was all about the reaction. When you could hear an audience wince or take that deep inhale of breath because something crazy is after happening. Number one in my mind is hope the guys are safe, hope everybody's healthy and happy out there. But number two is they're having the fucking time of their life out there. They have to be.
No,
I just want to. Sorry, go on, Martin.
Oh no, you go ahead because mine would be a nice. I know where you're going with this. So it might be a nice little kind of segue.
Okay, I was going to start talking about NLW, so I'm just.
Oh, perfect. Then never mind. Ignore it because I'm very cautious of of time. So I know you have 50 more questions. I'll try and put down to maybe like 3 or 4 more, and I just wanted to bring this.
Two.
You have two. Oh, perfect. I just wanted to bring this one up because this is the one I've been like dying to talk to you about. I want I go back to Fight Factory, and I think it was episode 26 was Justy versus a bear.
Yeah, do we have to talk about that one?
We have to talk about that one.
It's one of my favorite matches of this year. Like,
yeah, not one of my favorite matches. Yeah, I got mauled by a bear. Yeah, I think that kind of stems from I've always said it that I'd love to wrestle a bear, an honest to God bear. I've seen like videos of Tracy Smothers, and and like Piper, few guys at World's Fairs, just wrestling bears, like unmuzzled fucking brown bears. And I always said I'd love to do it, and I'd still say to this day, if you know, I'm also an animal lover, so I don't want to put an animal into a position where it's going to be like freaked out or anything like that. But if the opportunity ever arose and I could do it without endangering a bear or causing it any kind of stress, I would absolutely fucking love to wrestle a bear. And I got to in Fight Factory, I got to wrestle a bear, and that kind of led up as a bit of a joke where Katie Harvey, who is booking the Fight Factory shows now, is she just put it out there that Justy was going to wrestle a bear, and I had no idea. That she obviously got a graphic made up, and then put it out there and had absolutely no game plan, and didn't know what she was going to do with it, but thought it would be something funny to put out there. And then tickets started to fucking fly for that show, and it was probably one of the best selling, like fastest selling shows, probably the fastest selling Fight Factory show that we've had in the Fight Factory itself, in the iteration that we're doing it now. And yeah, so people are like, oh, we have to do something now. We have to do something with this bear. So yeah, so I had a look and I saw the suit online and I was like, this thing is expensive. And Katie's logic was that they flew in imports for a show and it didn't sell as fast as the bear thing. So if the bear cost as much as an import, then it was worth it. Yeah. And that's what we did. So they forked out to get the bear, and yeah, the rest is history. What we're doing in the future, I have no idea, but yeah, I would have loved for it to be one and done, but I really would have loved to be able to do a whole program with the bear, but I think the bear is limited. You know, it's not going to be able to do a bell-to-bell wrestling match with sleeps, leaps, hip tosses, and whatever you're going to do. So yeah, it's finding what we can do with that bear and still make it entertaining by the end. So yeah, the bear is still knocking around. He's still here somewhere, but what the future is for Justy and the bear, I have no idea.
Tag team champs, I'm calling it now.
Yeah, I talked to Phil. I don't know.
Go on, Carmo.
I just want to bring up NLW kind of, not necessarily briefly, but briefly. Obviously, it's kind of your home promotion in there in Kildare. How much fun do you have doing those NLW shows?
Yeah, so I'm fairly open about NLW being like the most fun I have when I'm actually wrestling. Like I love everything I do in all promotions. Like I was in Titanic at the weekend wrestling with Phil. We had a ball. Wrestling in the Fight Factory. I get to wrestle a bear. I get to wrestle with Phil all the time in the Fight Factory. We get to do stuff that, you know, is silly. I'm commentating for RCW, which itself has its own kind of serotonin injection into my brain as well. But I just, in NLW, I get to be just the silliest, craziest version of Justy, and I just love it so much because like I feel like you're in a theater, so I feel theatrical just being in front of those like tiered seats, I think. And the fact that it's kind of just a bunch of kids, and each month I get to do something different. And where I say it to Jamie Coleman, who runs those shows, I say like, what do you want from me today? And he'll say, whatever you want. You know, he'll give me the rough, whatever he wants from me, and then he lets me do what I want. And I think that kind of level of trust, where he would actually encourage me to go like as far as possible, in the realm of crazy, because it pops him in. Like, basically, NLW it's great that the audience is out there, and I love that reaction. But really, I'm kind of NLW. I'm trying to pop Jamie in the box, or whoever's watching in the curtain here beside me. I'm trying to pop the boys with just the ridiculousness of it. And I think, like, probably the last show that we had there with the Rumble was probably some of the best fun I've had in NLW as well. Like, that Rumble was just a riot.
I was going to ask you about that Rumble, like, how fun was it as well? And one of the things that you can actually, just because, you know, you can tell you were having fun, and if anyone ever wants a very fun drinking game, somehow watch that Rumble and take a shot every time Justy goes, Justy, in that Rumble.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, if you leave me out there for long enough, I'm going to shout Justy. Like.
Has like a timer in his head, like once the timer goes off, Justy!
Yeah, basically that's the goal as well. I think, just to get into that Justy thing, like, it's funny how I was explaining it the other week as well. Someone asked me about the Justy thing, and just like, I used to go out and think of as many things as possible to get over, like, the gimmick myself with, like, as I said, with Just in Shape, I had like a whole spiel. Like, when I was doing promos, I had a whole spiel, and I had a whole lot of these like lunchtime spell, like all that squad I'm talking about, all this stuff, like gimmicks and catchphrases. And I wanted to be like The Rock or Stone Cold, who had like a million catchphrases. And then I realized that if I was going to brand myself and be like the most recognizable name in Irish wrestling, I'm not saying I am, but like, if I wanted to get myself over in a way that if you say one word, people will know who you are, what better word to use than your own name?
Yeah.
So it was I know you're looking at time, but like,
oh no, you're great. Keep going.
But to waffle a little bit here and to digress with my ADHD brain, I will say that I was explaining it the other week. I was watching one of the best lessons that I ever got in professional wrestling was from Nickelback's Chad Kroger, who years and years and years ago, I was watching an interview on television, and he was explaining that they'd brought out that song, How You Remind Me, you know, and it was in the charts for like 30 weeks, you know, 6 weeks #1. And he was trying to figure out how to capture the magic of that same thing. And he said there was a hook and that people aim for. So like, they'd sing along for the song, and this is how you remind me of what I really am. Well, he said there was a hook there where people like screamed during the song, which was the yeah, because it was easy. It was one word. It was simple, and people attached themselves to that one thing. So when they were playing that live, he noticed everyone was louder on that part. And when people were buying the records and playing it back, or when people were talking about the record, they'd be like, oh, that song, like, yeah. And he was saying, like, so they just, whenever he was writing a song that he thinks he could make a hit, this time he was looking for that one hook and that one thing that people are going to shout. And then I started thinking about that in professional wrestling wise. And it was, I just kept coming back to like catchphrases, but what was the easiest catchphrase? And it was Stone Cold with what? And he changed wrestling completely. Everybody in the wrestling world had to change their promos because what was so popular. And Stone Cold had just like infected wrestling with that what. And that's why I purposely introduced squat in with the gymnasties, and we were doing that, and that was the thing at the time. So for the gymnasties, squat was the thing. So when we do a promo, I'd say a line and I'd say a squat, and then the guys would squat and then the audience would laugh. And then the next time I said squat, the audience would join in. And then by the third time, I wasn't saying squat, it was the audience that was saying squat. And then every time we came down to do a promo, as long as I could keep my cadence with my promo, to a point where I gave the audience time. So I go da 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 da, squat, da 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 da, squat, and that became like I sold T-shirts with squat written on them. Like my most successful merch was that squat T-shirt, and I ruined everybody else's promo on Irish wrestling because when they came out and tried to talk, people were just shouting squat, and that's how the gymnasties became like really kind of, I think, well, it's not how, but like it helped the gymnasties when people were thinking about, oh, they're the squat guys, and even the guys who didn't know anything about wrestling, like who were just kind of coming along for those crazy OTT nights, they were like squat, squat, squat. So then I realized after that if you just refine your character and your branding down, and you don't have to do a bunch of stuff, like if you look at the likes of LJ, who's just like living his beautiful life, and then he's got his music, and everybody knows that when you see It's a Beautiful Life written anywhere, you automatically think of LJ Cleary. And like there's so much other stuff in like Barry had a bunch of them, like the Hup and Edit That, and like stuff like that in his promos were catchphrases that people will cling on to. So for me, I just refined it down so much that I was like, what's the perfect thing to do? And I remember back to my days of when I was in Team Mega, when I was in like the gymnasies, I always like in Mega, before we used to do our finisher, we call it the Mega Move, and I just shout Mega, and then I like all the wrestlers. That's me. Like if I walk into a room, the wrestlers would like just go Mega. Like that was the thing that they were shouting at me. So I just thought back to that, and I thought back to squat, and I just went right. So if Justy just went around and didn't say much of anything except for Justy, then obviously everybody's going to remember Justy. And I had a long time where people would always say, "Oh, that lad on the show, he was hilarious. Yeah. This lad who wore that, or that lad who did this." But no one ever says after the show, "Do you know the lad who did this about me?" anymore. They'll say Justy, because I've shouted my name so much that they know I'm Justy. And that's where that kind of comes out. And that's why you, in that Rumble in LLW, you would have seen me shout my name Justy 150 times.
That same person with that same realization was actually Adam Cole. I think it was after Joey Mercury, and I don't know his indie name, but he was doing it. He was like, going to the shows and shouting his name, and because as you said, you could do this crazy spot, that crazy spot, but it's gonna be, oh, remember when that guy did that? So Adam was like, I'll just shout my name, because who are you gonna remember with a guy that keeps saying his name 50 odd times?
Yeah. So like, yeah, I'm glad Adam got something from me. I'm just glad I was
great. He's a huge Justy fan. Like, I can't wait for All In Wembley Stadium when Justy runs down. Long-term storytelling and cost MJF the title.
Yeah, that would be classic. Yeah. Actually, have you got Tony Khan's number? I can maybe pitch that to him.
Could happen, yes. Look, I'm kind of conscious on time, so I do want to kind of move it into the kind of final segment of what I was going to talk about, which was obviously Fight Factory. So as we're recording this on Saturday, it's the 16th year of Fight Factory. You've seen a lot of people come like through those doors. Obviously, you've been through those doors yourself. You're currently a coach in Fight Factory. What does Fight Factory mean to you?
Fight Factory is home. Fight Factory is where I belong. It's if everything else crumbled to the ground in professional wrestling, for me, I think I'd still have Fight Factory. It will always still be there. I'd have a place. It's where it's where I, first steps of my journey were in the company that would then become Fight Factory a few years later. Like we say it's 16 years Fight Factory, but really it's 20 plus years of that same kind of traditional wrestling company from NWA Ireland. Fight Factory came, so again, I consider Fight Factory my mecca for wrestling, and I think there's an argument to be made, I suppose, that Fight Factory is like one of the best training schools like around, like not just here, but like in the world. I know people use hyperbole a lot, when they're talking about the best, and they talk about the best in Europe or the best here or the best there. I honestly think that the Fight Factory probably has like you can see the lineage from the Fight Factory. You can see the guys who came out there, like the likes the guys who most of the guys who are coaching in like the other school in Ireland are from Fight Factory. You know, like it's kind of one of those things that you can trace everyone back to Fight Factory, like from Fergal Devitt to JD McDonough now with Jordan, Eva Valkyria, like those guys all train in the same spot and they're the same mats. Like we have like some of those boards that were on that original ring in NW Ireland are still in the Fight Factory right now. Like, so it's Fight Factory to me is it's history. It's an Irish wrestling mecca, and for me personally, it's where I consider my home and the place I can turn to whenever all of this is gone and my bones are turning to dust. I can still show up in the Fight Factory and be happy and be satisfied that I'm where I should be.
Now, as a coach there, you know, obviously there's many people out there that are probably thinking of doing it, but they're not too sure. What's the bit of advice you'd give to somebody who's thinking about doing, giving wrestling a try, but it's just not too sure?
It's easy, and I think it's the piece of advice that everybody would give would be just walk through that door. Just walk through it. Like, it's not going to cost you anything except for time to walk through on your first training session. If you don't like it, nobody's going to judge you. There's no obligation to stick around. No one's going to charge you like a year in advance for professional wrestling. If you go through that door on your first training session, walk up to a coach, tell them you're brand new, it's your first day, and you watch how people will like bend over backwards to accommodate you and to try and make wrestling something that is achievable for you. So for me, the number one piece of advice isn't get fit or make sure that you have all your gear ready or go and ask all these questions, like go online and research. The easiest thing and the hardest thing to do in professional wrestling is taking a first step in, because it's daunting. But in the Fight Factory, I think we've tried to make an atmosphere, and those guys that are down there, like I say I'm a coach, but like I'm kind of a guest coach at this point because I don't get down half as much as I would like to get down. But the guys that you have down there that are actually coaching, like, you know, first of all, Katie and Phil, who run the Fight Factory, are just the talent that they've churned out over the years is immense. But when you've got guys on board like LJ Cleary, who has one of the best minds for professional wrestling that I've ever seen, and people like Martin Steers, who is just a ball of energy and enthusiasm for professional wrestling, and will get you, you know, get everybody enthusiastic into professional wrestling. Guys like Fabio, and you know, like just guys that when you wrestle with them, you'll get a little bit better. And then you've got Debbie, who's just a wealth of knowledge, like, and just an absolute, like, probably just as a coach, just A1, or like impeccable. I remember when I done the beginner's course with Debbie, we took it together, and I just noticed like the stuff that she brought from her time doing WWE tryouts and stuff like that. And just the advice she has from when she traveled and stuff like that, it's incredible. Like, so you've got a bunch of people, like there's guys that I haven't named down there like that. I'm obviously forgetting, like, but like you've just got a fountain of wrestling knowledge and enthusiasm and encouragement. And I think that that's what you've got in the Fight Factory, is just a bunch of people who are willing to give you their time. So if you make that decision to walk through that door, you'll be given enough time and enough respect that you will have every opportunity that you can take in professional wrestling.
Perfect. It's Carmo.
Absolutely. One of the kind of questions that I have, like the next gen shows, like how important are those to kind of like Fight Factory as well? Because you obviously get in a lot of that European talent that kind of get introduced not only to Irish wrestling but obviously Fight Factory.
Yeah, the next gen shows are pivotal. Like a lot of those guys that are on the next gen shows, like again, you don't know who to bring up onto your main roster, by just looking at them training. So once you can see them and get these guys reps and in front of an audience, you know, and seeing how they have like they interact with an audience or how they perform when the pressure is on, that gives you a good indication of how far along they are in the wrestling journey. So you need these next gen shows, and it's come to a point now where people are coming from far and wide just to come to wrestle on a next gen show, which we like has surprised us. Like when we done our last next gen show, we had a bit of a training camp before it, which we always do, and I think we had like 60 plus people on the mats beforehand between the two rooms that we have down there in Fight Factory. We have like, so then you have to try and get 60, like, you know, you don't want to disappoint people, but like you've obviously some people probably aren't ready for the next gen shows in there, but a lot of them are, and a lot of guys are actually probably ready to advance on from next gen shows, and they're all vying for a spot on a show, and you kind of have to disappoint a lot of people there as well, which is it's great in one respect to have so much interest and people coming from all over the country and beyond, as you said as well. Like we've got guys coming from Europe in here who are getting like to be put out in front of Irish audiences for the first time, and it's a great indication. Like Katie Harvey can have a look at these guys who are coming over who she's never seen before, except for maybe the few hours before a next gen show in training, and she gets to see them in the next gen show, and there's some people there who are kind of like, oh, we could have these guys on a Fight Factory show if we get them, if they're willing to come over for a Friday night, like we can put them on a Fight Factory show, and it has happened. So yeah, I think next gen is really important for our own guys to get the reps in and in front of an audience, but also that we kind of see people from other places that could be the next breakout star that you'll see. Like a lot of guys that you see on Fight Factory on a Friday, like it doesn't take long before it catches wind and you'll see them in other promotions around the place as well. And I think next gen and shows like that, like other schools and other promotions have their versions of it as well, where you need you need them for the next wave of Irish talent to cut their teeth so that they can be bumped up onto regular shows like Fight Factory shows or OTT shows or RCW or Knox or Titanic or wherever it is that they're going to be doing.
100%. Martin, I'm going to ask you, do you have any final questions? There's only one more question left.
No, take it. Go with it.
Just before we absolutely run out of time.
You're busting my balls here, Carmo. Like
it's okay. It's
come
okay.
on.
I don't do it often, so it's okay. Justy, my last question for you is slightly, I won't say a weird one, but you mentioned it in the little interview that we did after Hard Knocks as well, that there might not necessarily be all the time left or much time left for Justy in ring. Do you just kind of take it day by day, or have you kind of a time frame set in mind?
No, I don't have a time frame set in mind. I think it's ridiculous to say like I'm retiring from pro wrestling, because I feel like I'll be around in some capacity no matter what, even if the in-ring stuff kind of dries up. But no, I never would put a kind of a time frame on it. I'm kind of just listening to my body at the time, or at this time. So I'm getting very creaky, and I'm not getting any fitter. Well, I kind of am. I'm trying to get myself now to the motivation and the enthusiasm to get a little bit fitter, just so I can prolong things just a little bit more. So I've been like working out. I'm in the last month, I'm probably down about 5 kilos thereabouts. So I'm trying to get into a position where I'll be able to have matches that I can be proud of, and not kind of, I want to go out with a bang rather than a whimper. So if I do end up calling it a day, I want to be able to say that I gave it my all coming to the end. That being said, I could be around for another 20 years, like doing silly, maybe just shouting Justy and, hitting a drop toe hold or whatever I'll be able to do at that time. But for now, I'm just playing it by ear, like going day by day and seeing how much I can get out of this creaky old body of mine.
Joe, just because it kind of came in my head there. Just, will we ever have you and Luke Barry on commentary again? Because you two are by far my favorite commentary team.
Oh, thank you very much. It's something that I actually was discussing with Billy. That commentary. Sometimes I feel like, do I want to be commentating when I could still be wrestling? Because am I wasting some of the last few wrestling years, or the fast, even months, or whenever it is, whenever I'm going to pack it in? Am I wasting my time when I could be wrestling, doing commentary? That being said, Billy is a big fan of my commentary as well. For whatever reason, I don't know. It's just two lads shiting on. But the commentary also makes me very anxious. It's the same reason why I kind of knocked the podcasting on the head as well, because I get very anxious about what I've said, and I do tend to again, I have a very overactive mind. So when I am post show, maybe like that night, the day after, 2-3 days after, I'm worrying about, did that sound shite? Like I get very in my own head about the likes of commentary, because it's different than wrestling. When I wrestle, I feel like I'm in control. I go out there, I am, I've got my tools in my hands. I I get to kind of improv my way through it. But I feel a little bit different about commentary in a way that sometimes my mouth runs faster than my brain, and I get kind of very anxious afterwards. That all being said, you're going to hear me and Luke commentate again on September 9th. So I'll be back in RCW, and I've been discussing it with Billy, and I'd like to still get to wrestle some matches down there for RCW, but he's pretty happy with me as a commentator, so I think you're probably stuck with me on the mic for a while.
I mean, as long as it's with Luke, I'm happy. The chemistry you two have. I can't remember. Yeah. I remember I said it to Luke. I said the exact quote it was. I think it was on the Easter show or something. He had said something, and then you just went off in a waffle. It just starts, you can't say that. Well, I've said it now. It is what it is.
Yeah, and then I probably worried for 3 days about it. But yeah, no, I've another man that I have big respect for is Luke. I think he's impeccable when it comes to the likes of commentary, and he's a great showman as well. So he's the kind of guy who puts his heart and soul into professional wrestling, loves wrestling, and he's kind of like we're of the same mind in wrestling. I think that we love the theatrical side of it. We're about character and the spectacle of professional wrestling. And we have good chemistry. I've always got on really well with Luke when we've chatted post show or before shows and stuff like that. We always end up pissing, laughing at one another. So I always kind of knew that if I got my chance to sit up with Luke, that we could have a great time, even if it's only us that is enjoying it. But I think, another man I have great respect for is Luke, and I really enjoy working with him, because I think he makes me a little bit better as a commentator, because he can lead me in the right direction, and I think he can hold my attention as well. So yeah, definitely I'm going to be around for RCW for another bit of commentary.
Cannot wait. Carmo?
I'm washed up. If I just ask you any more questions, we're here for another 2 hours, so I'm going to leave it at that. We'll save it for another day down the line, hopefully, where we get you back on. But Justy, thank you so much for joining us again tonight.
No, lads, it was an absolute pleasure.
And before obviously we let you go, we always do this with the lads. Do you have any socials, anything you want to plug, shows coming up, anything like that? This is your time now.
Yeah. Like, you can look at my socials. They're online. I think Instagram is Justy_fishhook, which I thought I changed, but still that fishhook thing is fucking following me around. I'm on Twitter as well. I'm sure if you follow Irish wrestling, you will see me. What's the name? What's the name again? Justy.
I'll tell you about the new Twitter name.
I don't know. Yeah, who cares? At Justy something or another. Yeah. But yeah, that's my socials. Shows, basically, if it's happening, go to it. I might be there. NLW is in. We've got one at the end of October. No, at the start of October. In NLW in Naas. Fight Factory is the next couple of days, so this is probably coming out after them. And really looking forward to that in Longford. Then obviously look up RCW September 9th, I think. Hard Knocks, I'm sure they have something for me. No one's gone to me yet, but I wouldn't come in and beat someone up with a barbed wire kendo stick if they didn't have anything for me. And there might be something of my own, Fight Factory wise, but in Kildare here in November. So Kildare Town, November. This is kind of exclusive, so yeah, you've heard it here first. We'll be back in Kildare in November, but that's ages away, so just keep your ear to the ground.
Don't tell anyone he told you now. You didn't hear it. Like, just keep it to yourselves. But Justy, thank you so much for coming out. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on. Carmo, I love throwing that outro to you.
Yeah, it's that time of the week again. Justy, thank you so much again. I can't thank you enough for actually joining us here today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me. It's actually been a ball doing it.
And we'll 100% have you back on again somewhere, maybe later in the year, hopefully.
Just sit the two of you down. Carmo could go for it. Ages.
But look, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the 5Marks Podcast, and for another week, we are officially ding, ding, done.